Are you thinking of moving to Winterville, North Carolina?
Or maybe you've never heard of it and you're thinking of Greenville, North Carolina. And then like us, we relocated here, I want to say 5 years now. Wow, that's a long time. But really, I want to kind of go through our own thought process when we were moving to a place we had never lived. We didn't know where we were. We didn't know anything about the area. And when we first moved here, we were like, what are we going to do? So, and yes, when
basically we wanted to tell them a personal story.
Right. And I want to kind of start off with like every single person's going to tell you something different. And one of the first things they tell you is maybe you should rent for a year before you see if you like it. Now, I'm a mom, I have kids. I wasn't really looking for another rental to where I have more people in my life that are just bothering me. I like quiet peace. And so that kind of concept for me wasn't for me. But the second thing is, if you're going to buy, you have to buy in the right school zones. And specifically Conley, even though my babies were babies at this point, this was 5 years ago, they were 2 and 0 really. They were very babies. And so those are just things there. And people tell you those because the school zone is where the value is. You want to add anything else?
Exactly. Therefore, really what we wanted to say here that based on our personal, and I came here to work at ECU, by the way, in the medical center. And our thought process, as my wife said, where is the place that is safe? I can have as good a school zone for my two young daughters, and then how that's gonna help me to have amenity and be still commuting not long enough that I can get to my house and my family on time. That was our concept, really.
Absolutely. And one of the first things I told you, we were looking at the Conley High School, even though my kids weren't even high school. And I can tell you right now, we did not buy in that area. And I'm not upset. The house we ended up buying, I actually picked on the internet. I've told people that before. I've never actually saw it in person. I had my realtor go around with the video, which is what we do for all of our clients too. But we try to give you more information because they forgot to tell me about certain things, and I try not to forget anything. Like, for instance, the creek in the backyard. I didn't know about the creek. I have babies. I don't know if I would have bought my house if I had known about that creek, but I'm okay that we did. But I would say paper isn't the only thing. You have to consider other factors. And honestly, our house was one of the best financial decisions we made, and especially for our lifestyle. You want to add anything before we move on?
I think more than a financial decision was like we as four of us, we feel secure, you know? And that's why my wife was telling you that you pretty much can do whatever you want around your house and still make sure that is the home, because your kids, when they grew up in that home, they accept that home as their home. No?
Yeah, just to give you a real example, when we lived in an apartment building, when we were moving out of this apartment building, it was a very temporary situation, but I had 2 kids as they were about to move cross country. We had talked to one manager about like a parking, getting one of those, like a pod to get all our stuff in, and then literally the entire building got blasted, like, who has a pod, blah, 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 you didn't ask permission. It's like, we actually asked above this person who sent that blog. But like, this is exactly why I can't live in apartments. I can't live with people thinking they have power over my life in any way. So it's just one of those real stories from me that I was like, I am done with that. Because everybody has their own breaking point, and that was it for me. How dare you blast the whole building? I have permission. What are we talking about?
Exactly. Therefore, now, at the time of this video, if you're watching this video and probably you're starting at like a Zillow or Realtor.com right now, and you open like a 15 or 20 tabs on your browser, and you're looking at also at the same time great school.com or niche.com for rating of those schools, and you're looking at, for example, what is the crime rates in that area, and you're probably feeling that heaviness, that tightening your chest, because the perfect house that you want, it should be in the perfect school district and also should be safe. And beside of those, it still needs financially make sense for you and your loved one if you want to take on this journey.
And you should actually, as much as possible, if you can show up. Because I can tell you, one of the houses that we fit that hit everything on the map, it should have been the perfect house. My husband walked in one step and he said, absolutely no, walked right back out. Took him about 30, not even 30 seconds. That's too long, but 2 seconds to walk in. This house has weird energy. I am not staying in this house. And immediately after, I don't even know why. I didn't even get inside the door because he's like, no. So, I mean, you have those feelings are matter too. And because you have to feel where you're going to live. And then we're going to talk about our education strategy, but also understand trusting your gut sometimes. And that's what I want to say.
Exactly. Therefore, we believe in total transparency, and we are going to, that's why we gave you all these stories, that how we felt when we first moved to Winterville, North Carolina. And
then when we did buy our house, our backyard was dirt.
Yeah, it was complete dirt, nothing, not even a seed or a sod. And it was just the plain dirt.
Yeah, we didn't know what to do.
Clay.
And that's one of the biggest mistakes we made in our first 2 years of home ownership here was that backyard was disaster. We finally figured it out. It's not a disaster now. It's not a weed garden. It's not just dirt. But let's start with the big ones that we were talking about earlier. Schools, because I told you I was an educator. My husband was an educator at some point. I'm originally from New England. Teaching backgrounds, both of us. Education is something that's just non-negotiable. And I want to make sure that my kids are in the best schools, getting the best education, and we want the best for our kids. And I'm sure you are the same way, I am sure. But like every parent, I looked at all of the grade levels. I looked at the graduation rates, the college readiness scores, the scores they're getting on the internet, and then we picked all the top tier, and then we sat and we looked at the reality of my babies are babies and a toddler. And buying a house that doesn't fit who we are, that's older, that was also just gave him heebie-jeebie vibes, we're not going to do that. So we have to make sure we're making it a financial decision that makes sense for us and our future, and then what can we do beyond that? So we looked beyond the scores at that point, and then we started looking at what we found elsewise.
Exactly.
We look beyond.
Therefore, really, we deep dive in more than just looking online, because when you look at the general reputation, actually look at the proficiency numbers, no? Therefore, for example, when we're looking at for our kids for Winterville Elementary School, we saw this overall rating of 9 out of the 10. And the math proficiency was sitting at 80%. And the science proficiency was around 86%. And reading a score significantly above the state average.
Right, and when you're looking at elementary, and our kids were not even elementary level at that point, really kindergarten, first grade, second grade, these are your most formative years when we're talking about school education. So, and I can tell you, we are zoned for South Central High School. That's the house we bought in is zoned for South Central. I know that the proficiency scores are not exactly what I want for my kids, but by choosing what we have, by prioritizing their current needs, I can figure out what we need to do for ourselves. And by building equity, saving money, and having our dream house, we can see how things change, what I can do to make my choices better. And education is, of course, first on my mind, but I have to make sure that and it's not a bad school, I am very, very rigorous in how I think about my own kids. So that is just something
I'm
for
sure
me,
the audience are the same
that
way.
Everybody has their own little 100%. So you have to think about outside the box too. So just making sure, and there's no slam, it's a great school, but just make sure that one choice that you've never even been in, you've never stepped in, and you're just judging based on numbers alone, based on a computer screen, is not going to give you peace of mind in the future. My kids might end up there and they might love it there. I don't know the future. I can just tell you that on numbers, before I moved here, I was afraid.
Exactly. Therefore, the next part that we want talking about really is the financial and lifestyle trade-off. Yeah. And this is really actually leads to the money that many people are thinking about it, because you need to have a financial planning mindset that what's now that I look at all these numbers, I look at all the schools, I look at the area, the safety of area, but now we need to talk about the home or real estate, and everything, it really pretty much is a trade-off. When you want number one, location, ranked location, you need to pay for it, of course. And that's what we felt also when we came, because that dream district and your budget, you're looking at the houses that felt right, that checkmarked all of your criteria. At the same time, also budget-wise, is going to make sense for you.
And we didn't want to buy some sort of tiny house where we would have. My house is over 6 feet tall. We don't want to be someplace where we feel small. And we didn't want to buy a small home either, because we needed to make sure our kids had space for them to grow and change and have their own space too. And maybe we want to have a guest room to where people come and stay with us, because we have families outside of that, and we didn't want to have $20,000 in repairs. So my husband was personally for new. He was 100% pro new. So I'm going to say I was okay with it. He was 100% for it, because he doesn't want to deal with immediate repairs.
Exactly. Therefore, this allowed us to be a little bit the budget, to being not a house poor. I know that many of you that are thinking of, okay, I love to have this, but also I need to look at my budget. This is not the only expense that I have for my family. And you're right. And we tell client also this all the time. You live in a house, not in the school map, no? And if you're buying a home that is perfect district, means that you're stressed about the mortgage every month, and that's not even feeling good either, no?
Right, you don't want stress in your life, but stress is not a good thing. The next thing we want to talk about is culture. You want to add anything about that?
The culture, you're good at culture. You can talk about
I know if you want to talk about finances still. Did I interrupt your financial questions?
Okay.
But basically, we were city kids, right? All our entire lives. I've lived in big cities. He lived in big cities. We never lived in the suburbs. We never lived in rural areas. I have never known. I knew on paper what a septic system was, but I know I didn't want one when I moved here because I didn't want to deal with something I didn't understand. Because again, I'm a city person.
Unknown.
It's the fear of the unknown, exactly. And I'm sure it would have been perfectly fine, but that at that moment was just no, I don't really want to be on a septic. And then if you're from New York, Boston, Raleigh, Charlotte, Miami, you might understand what we're talking about because in cities, we don't even think about those kind of stuff. And so our identities were wrapped up in you walk, you could go to restaurants where you could walk, you hear the noise all the time, you just understand chaos. You can even walk to the beach and hear the noise of the quiet because that's what you want to hear. But here, we moved here and the only noise I hear once in a while is airplanes overhead, and that's because they're going somewhere else. And that's very rare.
Exactly.
It's never
I
been
remember we moved, and my wife still was not moved here. She was still in Florida with the parents. And I was going to the hospital every day for my work, and I was telling my wife, I don't know, where do you take me? This is so quiet, there's no noise here. And also I feel that we are not in the city, we are just in the country. And that was like a change of the lifestyle, because as you said, we never lived in small places.
And we couldn't walk. There's no walking.
Yeah, there was no walking.
Except for leisure.
Always was like a driving to different area. Therefore, let's be honest with you, the first year I felt like a very isolating. And we had the moments of regret that did I make a good decision? And we wonder, did we lose who we are? And did we make a mistake? That's what we did. And what
we love about our neighborhood is when we drive by, people wave, and when we've talked to people are very friendly. We can talk to I know most of our neighbors, and then also there's a lot of transplants, so I can find a lot of people from New York, less people from Boston, but I'm definitely finding them all the time because that's my place. But basically, you have to join places and get into the community, find your community, find your gym, find your spots that you like to be, and then you transition yourself slowly into being a part of that area. And then let's just go back to our garden, because I did start with that. How do we handle that? Because again, we never had a garden, we never had anything. We were city people.
Exactly. The first thing was to start sitting in that backyard.
Yeah.
There was play, and there was always dirt. And then, of course, it was during the time that we moved here, and for the finance point of view, we didn't have enough money to put a big old fence around the house. Therefore, we start planting nice trees around the line of the property.
Right, but also we didn't know the difference between fescue and Bermuda grass. We knew nothing about soil,
or
watering,
the vegetable garden,
or weeds versus vegetables versus flowers.
Exactly.
Really, we never really dealt with any of that. And my husband had that push mower, and he was like, "I hate pushing a mower. This is the worst thing in the world for me." He hated it, and that was something we had to deal with because he.
And the reason was I was working crazy hours, and I just had one weekend, and I needed to push the mower on the weekend
and
for
then
2 hours.
And then we didn't know what we were doing, and it was all weeds.
Therefore, all it comes is everything actually paid off. We established our house, or the neighborhood that we saw the people, the friendliness, because all we said about it was that story that we telling ourselves that is super important. But we love the culture that we have in Greenville, North Carolina, and Winterville, North Carolina, which is the suburb. And the neighborhood is established. We have more amenities, more jobs that came to the area, and doesn't feel anymore that we are strangers because we see ourselves part of this community.
And basically, and I hope our story resonated with you because, again, relocating is a stressful thing. We help people relocate all the time, and trying to balance all of the thoughts that go on in your head, like I was talking about schools and crime and educate, all of those things are really there. And then also the stress of what do you do with the law and even those things. So if you find our story interesting, because I can't wait to talk to you about that.
Exactly. Therefore, definitely book a call with us on the link below in the description with Alan Victoria, or You can call us directly at 252-327-3357. I'm Victoria Pinder, real estate agent in Greenville and Winterville, North Carolina. And also don't forget to watch all of our playlists, everything about the area, Greenville, North Carolina and Winterville, North Carolina. And support us by clicking on that subscribe button and write comments and share your story. We'll love to connect with you and help you to get the house that you love. And see you next time.